What's up, guys? Coach Kane here, and before we get into the topic at hand, I just wanted to wish you all a Happy New Year and say that I hope you're able to make the most of it. That being said, I wanted to also thank all of you who've subscribed. We were able to go from 0 to over 3,250 subscribers strong in just 1 year, and nearly 2 million channel views. I've gotten so much positive feedback, and I really do appreciate each and every person who takes the time to watch my videos. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Without further ado, in today's video I want to talk to you guys about Plant versus Benavidez, one of the most highly anticipated fights of the new year. More specifically, 5 habits or tendencies of David's boxing that I believe Caleb Plant is capable of exploiting. Don't get me wrong though, I believe that David is going to be able to take the W in this one. He's who I'm rooting for between the two of them, and I think Anthony Dirrell put it perfectly. Since he's one of their common opponents, you really have to take his comments into consideration. And I have to say that I agree 100% with his assessment of how the fight's going to go. Here's what Brian Custer of The Last Stand had quoted him as saying.
Anthony Dirrell said, listen, Caleb is a really good boxer, got good boxing skills and movement. He also said he believes that boxers give David Benavidez problems. But he said, overall, your hand speed and power will be the difference in the fight.
To me, that really says a lot considering how badly Dirrell was knocked out by Plant. So for him to say that Benavidez's power will be one of the deciding factors truly speaks to the danger his opponents face when stepping in the ring with him. But no boxer is completely invulnerable, and I have to say, there are a few things that David regularly does that I could see Caleb capitalizing on. The first of which is that David has a tendency to reach in too far with a variety of his punches. Most commonly, we see him do this with the right hook to the body, the straight cross to the head, and the lead uppercut, which is a mistake that cost him the first knockdown of his career against Gavril back in 2017. The issue of reaching with the lead uppercut seems to become more prominent as he gains confidence throughout his fights and begins to flurry more. Here in the fourth against Angulo, we see an eerily similar exchange to the one against Gavril that got David knocked down. Just as in the exchange against Gavril, we see Benavidez throw a glancing right hand, pause for a moment, and then overreach with the lead uppercut, which gets him check hooked. Before we talk about how Caleb could exploit this tendency, here's a side-by-side for comparison. Anyone who's watched Caleb Plant knows he has a great lead hook, and a great check hook at that. In the case of his knockout of Dirrell, I wouldn't call it a check hook, because he was already committed to doubling the hook from the body up to the head, and Dirrell made the mistake of hooking with the hooker. He simply opened up at the wrong time, and probably could have recognized at this moment that Caleb was loaded for a second shot, and probably would have had some success avoiding it if he'd have rolled underneath to his right. Being as tall as he is, David tends not to roll under hooks, and instead often exits mid-range by pulling. This habit, combined with an overreaching right hook to the body, leaves him in a very dangerous situation, as hooks can easily be adjusted mid-flight to be more of a straight punch, meaning that pulling away from hooks can be particularly risky. Since Caleb is primarily a counterpuncher, I would like to see him try to find a home for his left hook by waiting for one of David's overreaching right hooks to the body, which he could block with his lead elbow and counter to the inside with a lead hook. The second option for Caleb to land that devastating lead hook of his is to wait for David to overreach with his lead uppercut, as he frequently does. As he does this, he tends to drop his rear hand, which creates the perfect opening for the lead hook. The main difference for Caleb when countering off of these two punches is going to be timing. Caleb should be looking to counter David's right hook to the body the moment it touches his lead elbow. Timing it this way is what's known as an unimpeded counterpunch, because having just thrown his right hand, it's unlikely David would be able to get his hand back in time to defend. Gavril could have thrown his hook now and it would have landed just the same, but since his feet weren't quite set, he steps once more and throws it. Compared to the unimpeded counterpunch off of the right hook to the body, countering David's lead uppercut would preferably be done at the same time that he throws it, meaning that this would be the perfect time to be landing that counter hook, whereas Gavril landed just a little bit after the fact. Angulo's left hook had a better example of the timing I'm looking for, but he didn't throw it with much leverage. I'm not 100% sure what to call it, but the last punch that David consistently overreaches with is this feeler cross. He likes to flick it out there from a slightly square position and from really far away. This clip right here is the perfect example of how this can be exploited. As David is approaching, take note of how square his shoulders are. Davis takes the opportunity of David being squared up to him to shoot a probing jab, which was enough to initiate a response from David, in the form of that flicker cross. Chiron was quick to realize David's mistake and was able to get a nice jab out of it. The potential for Caleb Plant to exploit this pattern is really high. Simply box moving backwards, allowing David to square up as he walks in, and the moment he does, probe him with the jab in the hopes that he'll respond with an overreaching flicker cross, And the moment he does, come back with either the jab, cross, or lead hook. All would work. David's height and overall size serve him well most of the time, but when he tries to jab down to the body, it's a bit of a struggle for him, and he often finds himself with his head well over his lead foot and his right hand pulled way back, kind of like a bowstring. The way I would most like to see Caleb counter this is by parrying in his rear hand and countering with his right. But there's no reason why he wouldn't parry with the rear hand and shoot the left hook at the same time. When the range is this close, no defense is really necessary. Caleb could just go straight for the check hook at this point. In this case, David is feinting the jab to the head and then going to Angulo's body. Normally this would be a great way of keeping your opponent guessing, but with a boxer as good as Caleb, repeating this too many times actually turns into a telegraph for the next punch. It only takes 2 or 3 repetitions for a really good boxer to read and adjust to his opponents. So if Caleb could accurately register David's first jab for what it is, a feint, he could use that as his go signal for a hard cross, timing it to slip right in between the feint and the actual jab to the body. So far, we've talked about exploiting 4 punches that David tends to overreach with, namely his right hook to the body, his lead uppercut to the head, his flicker cross, and his jab to the body. The 5th habit I noticed about David's boxing is probably the least exploitable of them all, and it's because it's complacency. It seems to me that the more success he's having and the closer he's getting to finishing an opponent, the more his hands drop and the more he squares up on the inside. This one is really a double-edged sword, and it's probably Caleb's last chance at success, assuming all else fails. Because if he gets the chance to exploit David when he's dropping his hands and squaring up, that probably means Caleb's about to get knocked out. So I've got to say, although David's boxing might not be as pretty as Caleb's, his ring IQ is certainly just as high, and his power, speed, and punch selection are on another level. So even with a plan, Caleb is going to have some trouble with the Mexican monster. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is Caleb going to be able to capitalize on any of these potential setups? Or are we going to see the second loss of Caleb's career? That's going to do it for this one, guys. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for future uploads. It really helps out the channel.